Hi, I'm Dr. Lenne Hunt, and you are joining me for the fourth installment in our four-part series on the processes involved in the restoration of a marriage. In part 4, we addressed the concept of living in the new. And that simply is a reflection of the impossibility of going backward in a relationship. So when we talk about a relationship receiving restoration or coming to reconciliation, it's never a matter of it returning to what once was. That ship has unfortunately sailed. There is an Indian proverb that says you can't step in the same river twice. And that applies to these matters as well. You can't go back to something that is no longer there. There is only a moving forward with the relationship. And so part of coming into the new season is simply that, recognizing that this is new. Same players, and maybe even some of the same dynamics. You might live in the same house, still have the same children, still be driving the same cars, and yet the marriage has been transformed and forever altered by what you've walked through together. There is good news and bad news, I guess, in that. The bad news, if you want to put it that way, is that there may be some things about the past that were really valuable to you and that you miss in the present. That doesn't mean that there can't be a new version of them, but it might well look different. Or perhaps there are things about the past in your relationship which you know you can't get back in exactly the same form, and there's a sense of grief over that, sense of loss over that. So when I say moving into the new, it does include that. It includes a grief period, a letting go, if you will, over the things that were lost along the way, the things that were damaged along the way, and that might never be again in that form. Grief is an okay thing. It's part of the path towards something new. In the seeds of grief, new life springs up, and that's true in relationships as well. So if you find yourself in that place of being glad for the restoration, but feeling wistful over the way things used to be, it's okay just to acknowledge that together. You probably both feel it to some extent. And then acknowledging it allows you to move forward. The moving forward is about forging sort of a joint vision for what the new should look like, what you want it to look like. Hopefully, what happens here is that what you craft together is a better reflection of the two of you as individuals, but also a better reflection of you as a couple than what the previous version was. Especially if the relationship has been a really, really long-term one. It's a common experience to find that as you've evolved over time as individuals, that sometimes the relationship is not caught up with that very well. And so this really is a reset. It's about coming into the new season of your relationship as you are now, not as you were once upon a time, but as you are now, and finding your way together, finding common ground. And that's in a variety of places. The common ground is in what can look like the trivial, finding interests together, finding things that you have in common. And these don't have to be things that you historically had in common. These can be new things. This is a great time for the two of you to make a list of all the things that you've ever even thought about doing and have never tried, and just to give them a go, to see what sticks and what doesn't. New things that might fit the two of you in ways that are kind of unexpected. And that can be anything from books that you read together to taking a pottery class, bungee jumping. The range is vast, varied, infinite, really, only bounded by your imagination and perhaps by your budget. But that's true for all of us, I guess. But it is really a time of exploration. Who are you now as individuals? Who are you now as a couple? What do you find stimulating? What breathes life for the two of you? Include in that things that breathe conversation. That could be as simple as watching the news together and having a, what do you think about that kind of conversation? It also is about a vision for the deep things. Shared purpose in life, shared spiritual values and how you implement those, how you walk forward together in faith. It could be about political beliefs. It could be about a cause that you want to support. The question here is, how do we jointly invest our lives together in something? It's one thing to make that choice for you as an individual, but there is real added value from the two of you combining your lives, combining your hearts, your skills, your interests together in the pursuit of something that's meaningful. And so that's worth several good conversations, probably. Another part of coming into the new season is also a reflection of the stage of life where you find yourself. There is this really simple truth that our change, our development doesn't end when we hit adulthood. I somehow thought that when I was a kid. We're used to children changing, looking visibly different with each decade. Everything from how we walk to what we're interested in. But somehow I thought that once you became an adult, that's where your development kind of stopped, and that is so not the truth. And so part of what happens in every relationship is that the people in it mature. They age, they change. And so in a very real sense, the people that we met, fell in love with, married once upon a time are different now than they were then. And there has to be the ability of the relationship to change with that, to allow for people growing, to allow for them changing their minds about things, coming into new interests, new values. And I admit that those occurrences can be challenging to a relationship, especially if the changes are substantive ones. Changes in life values can be pretty critical in a marriage. Finding your way through that is not as simple as one announcement that I've changed my mind. It's figuring out, what does that mean for the two of us? And if we now disagree about that big thing, how do we disagree respectfully and in a way that makes room for both of our positions? There's a real skill to that, to making room for the other one in places where our beliefs, our feelings, our interests are divergent. So that's part of the new season as well. Perhaps the transition for you is about kids growing up and leaving home, or at least growing up in a way that they need you less or differently than they did before. And what does that do to a relationship? What happens if in the process of raising children, you've forgotten how to be a husband and wife together? How do you recover that once the kids are not as present in the home? Again, it's sort of a get to know you kind of situation all over again. What have I missed in your life while I was distracted by being a mom or a dad or even a grandparent? What have I missed about you that I need to know? What have I missed about you that you want me to know? That's a really important part of rebuilding. It's a really important part of keeping people current, catching them up to where we are. So in the end, the process of restoration is sort of never ending. It's a continuous stream from here on out, where we work really hard to avoid the mistakes of the past, where we continue to cast vision for the future together, where we don't take one another or our relationship for granted. It's not like there's an autopilot that you can push and have a relationship survive that. They require pretty constant maintenance, sort of like a growing plant does. And so it's making those adjustments in attitude where we continue to work hard, not in a terrible, laboring over it kind of way necessarily, but in a way that recognizes that this is worth it. It's worth fighting for. It's worth working on. That you are worth pursuing every day of my life. It's that kind of attitude. I want to thank you for joining me for this today and remind you that if this is for some reason the first of these videos that you've watched, that there are 3 in the series that came before. The first is about the role of repentance, the second about forgiveness, and the third is about the process of trust building. Know that I'd be more than happy to have conversation with you about any of these. And I invite you, if you're interested in that, to call the client care team. You'll see their number down below. It is 206-219-0145. They'll be happy to get you on my schedule so that we can talk about the things that are close to your heart these days. Again, I thank you for joining and look forward to conversation with you. Thanks so much.